This is BlissVille, Misadventures in BlissVille at blissvillepodcast.wordpress.org for now, though I have been considering yet another domain name and a host, perhaps for next year. I'm David Lawler, and this is part one of my interview with my old friend, colleague, and contemporary, Eve Kerrigan. She's a very lovely person, an actress, and a very talented writer, and tonight we discuss what she's been up to, so I hope you enjoy it.
Most writers I know run that idiotic number about, oh, I like having written, but I don't like to write. It's hard work. Well, fuck you, hard work. You don't like it? Go out and, sail sailboats. Of course it's hard work. If it weren't hard work, everybody'd be doing it. And the better you do it, the harder the work is. It's supposed to be hard. Art is not supposed to be easy. Building roads is supposed to be easy. Fielding crops is supposed to be made easier for people. Art is supposed to be hard. Art is supposed to be demanding. That's the way I feel about it. I always say becoming a writer is easy. If you look at some of the crap Judith Krantz writes and Tom Clancy and people like that, things that live in petri dishes can become a writer. The trick is not becoming a writer. The trick is staying a writer. Day after story, after year, after novel, and just keeping going. That's learning as you go and getting better, not doing the same thing over and over and over again.
What do you like to write about?
I like to write about those moments when something strange, peculiar, and untoward happens to an average human being who in that moment discovers something in him or herself that makes him a different kind of person.
When I got thrown out of college, I went to New York and I lived there for a while. That's when I got started writing or selling. I've been writing all my life, but that's when I started selling, eking out an existence in a $15 a week room. That's when we got paid a penny a word for a story.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah, and I could write a 3,000-word story in a night and take it in the next day to, say, Ziff Davis Publishing Company, and they would give you a shit, and you go down to the paymaster and give me $30, and that was my food for the week.
Now, this is how I remember it. I was introduced to my guest tonight, Eve Kerrigan, through my wife, Bronwyn. Both were working at a financial concern called Capital Thinking. It was one of those .coms that went bust about 10 years ago, something like that. We needed an actress for a film I was working on. They only come out at night, so we got over for a meeting. She was working on a stage show with Tom X. Chow called Can't Get Started. It was a brilliant piece. I thought it was so good I saw it twice. I usually don't like theater, but I love this show. She's an extremely beautiful, extremely talented actress. She, and I don't mean this as an insult, projected intelligence, which seems to be a rarity these days for actresses. Wow. I just wish I had written more for her to do. I think she only had 2 scenes in the whole thing. But one thing that was really funny about it was we were working at Shetler Studios, I think, and you were waiting patiently. I think you must have been waiting for like 2 hours while I was trying to wrap up some scenes, and the Shetler Studio people were like on me because they didn't really like me like working in there for some reason, I forget. And I remember our hair and makeup girl, her name was Christina, she was like arranging your hair in all these ridiculous and strange hairstyles, and then eventually just going back to and you guys were just, I guess, hobnobbing and shooting the shit, and she was just doing these crazy hairstyles. But that was the funny part. I remember I was like, This is so weird. I'm in the middle of this battle with these people at Shetler. I'm trying to work on these scenes. There's the hallways are lined with people, I guess, who are auditioning for a reality show, I think. And meanwhile, you guys were just completely ignoring this whole thing and working on your hair.
Yeah, we were just playing like dress up, like beauty queen dress up or something. I don't know. It was super fun though.
So after that, from what I understand, you did a lot of traveling. You set up shop in California. You ran a Pilates studio, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think after I left New York, I went down to Atlanta, and I was in Atlanta for 3 years. I was getting my Pilates certification down there, among other things, and then I went out to Los Angeles. My husband, my now soon-to-be ex-husband, and I sort of got together. We had been friends for a really long time, and then we got together while I was in Atlanta.
Right. He worked at Capital Thinking, didn't he?
He sure did. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
because Bronwyn knew of him. And,
yes, exactly.
And
he moved out to California, and I went out there with him. What's that?
He didn't take your name?
No, he didn't take my name, and I didn't take his, and I guess that's all for the best at the end of the day.
Right. So it says you spent time in Europe?
Yeah, that was prior to meeting you, actually. I lived after I left high school, I moved to Eastern Europe. I moved to Prague for a year, and then I moved back to the U.S. and traveled around in the U.S. and Canada quite a bit for about 8 months, and then moved to Birmingham, Alabama, where I lived for 2 years, and then I moved to New York, and that's when you and I met.
Right. I have an ex-girlfriend who's living in Alabama now. She has 4 children.
Yeah.
So you settled in Atlanta.
Well, yeah. Then I ended up going back to Atlanta again, I went to Atlanta after leaving New York, went to Los Angeles, then went back to Atlanta. Does that make sense?
What was what happened that sent you to California? I know a lot of people have gone to California. Is there something there I'm missing?
You know, it's funny because I had such a snobby perspective on Los Angeles, I'll be honest. You know, when I first moved out there, I was living in Atlanta and I was finishing school and I was trying to decide if I wanted to move to New Orleans, back to New York, if I wanted to move to San Francisco. LA really never crossed my mind except in a cursory way because it's the obvious location to go if you're an actress, but I was sort of put off by it. I mean, I just assumed it was incredibly shallow and not that exciting a place to be, and so I was really not interested. But then John moved out there and he and I were together and I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to do this? I guess I'm going to bite the bullet and go out to LA. And, you know, it was such a great experience. I'm so glad I did it. And I realized that.
So it wasn't as bad as what you thought it was going to be.
No, like while some of my, you know, suspicions were confirmed, yes, it is all about the industry. It is superficial to an extent because there's a lot of.
Is it like what I think from like Californication, the show like that, where it's like half naked, tanned women running around all the time?
There is a certain amount of that.
And it's incredibly hot and arid, and you can't see the air or anything. You know, you can't breathe.
No, it's actually not incredibly hot. Most of the time, it's pretty moderate, and that's, you know, part of its possible charm, and also part of what makes it incredibly sort of hypnotic as a place. Like you kind of forget how long you've been there because the seasons don't really change.
I would probably want to see Northern California. I don't know if I'd want to see Southern California. I'd want to see, you know, the colder places.
Yeah, Northern California is amazing. I mean, you know, the truth is the whole state is amazing. And I loved Los Angeles for a lot of reasons that surprised me. Like, for example, what I really miss about it, probably more than anything, was being literally within 5 minutes drive to mountains, ocean, city, practically the desert, really. Like if you go inland far enough, you're in the desert. I mean, it's really an incredibly dynamic place, and it's so wonderful to be in the city and then to be able to escape for 3 hours and go on a hike that is unparalleled, and then go back. You know, I mean, I can't get that anywhere else, and I do really miss that part of it a lot.
Why did you stop acting? And
you know, I never really did stop acting. I just didn't really do it as like a main career for a long, long time. Like I moved out to LA and I started out auditioning and stuff, but I needed to work and I was teaching Pilates at the time. And so I was teaching at a studio and the woman who owned the studio decided to move away. And I sort of impulsively decided that I should buy her studio and take it over.
Right.
Which I did. And it was relatively successful. However, I didn't really think it through to the extent that, I mean, it was all consuming because it's, you know, running a business is all consuming.
Right.
And so that really took a toll on my ability to focus on acting. I still did stuff. I still took classes. I still, you know, auditioned here and there for things. But then what I ended up doing a few years into it, because I was going kind of out of my mind without being able to have that creative outlet, is a friend of mine and I started a small theater company called the Woodshed Artist Community, which was like a kind of ongoing workshop that we led.
This is California.
Yeah, this was in LA. And then we did performances. We did like, you know, stage readings, table read. We had like a weekly table reading series where screenwriters and playwrights could bring their work in to be read by actors.
Right.
We did full-fledged performances. Mostly everything we did was in the backyard or in the house, just because it was no overhead, but it was very charming, you know, and it was kind of a crazy thing because like at the end of it, we would do these shows and we would have like these big Hollywood producers and these like very recognizable actors and people like that coming in and paying $5 to like sit in the backyard and watch us pretend. It was kind of awesome.
You didn't give yourself like a 5-year plan? Like
No,
I know a lot
no.
of people, myself included. I gave myself I always did this back when I was younger. It's a younger thing, I suppose. It's a 20 to 30-year-old thing. You give yourself 5 years because you just have no patience for whatever you want to try and do. And if you can't
Right.
succeed in that amount of time, you quit and try something else. And I've known plenty of people who've done that too.
Yeah, I never really did that. I think I lacked the discipline to even give myself a 5-year plan,
Yeah,
to be
I would have to
completely
say that
honest.
about myself as well. I'm always the kind of person who wants to write a list of things. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, but then I can't find a pen, and maybe there's a
Yes.
pen over there. I don't feel like
Oh,
getting up and
God.
getting it.
What is it? Nora Zeal Hurston wrote Zora Neale Hurston wrote a great piece that is actually exactly like what you just said. She talks
Yeah.
about, I would write, but I can't find a pencil, and that's
Right.
like this whole amazing thing about how she can't find a pencil or a piece of paper and how much it will cost her to get those things. And
As to the writing, you have in the most in about a year and a half, you've sort of emerged as a writer. You've been writing some blogs. I've seen some of the stuff on your blog, and I've read your stuff. How long had you been writing?
truthfully, I've probably been writing off and on most of my life. I don't think I really sat down and took it very seriously until, like you said, probably almost 3 years ago. I was in school. I decided to pursue my undergrad pretty late in life, and I was doing that, and I had ambitions to be a cultural anthropologist because I thought that was like a really big umbrella under which I could smush all of
I
the
think
things
I
I was
remember you
interested
saying
in.
something about that
Yeah, yeah.
a long time ago. Yeah.
Like back in the day, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, probably.
it's possible. I mean, I just have a lot of varied interests, and so I didn't really consider that there was one thing that I could do that would really satisfy me. So I thought that was like a good umbrella.
Did you keep a journal?
I have kept a journal, yes, kind of
Huh.
right along. Sometimes, there are gaps where I haven't, but yeah, I've been writing in a journal since I was probably a teenager or younger. I actually found journals from when I was like 7 or 8, not too long ago. Which
Well,
was,
you had described yourself as a child that you were like a rebellious teenager. Did you write a lot of angst-filled stuff in your journal when you're like
oh
doing
my, yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. I wrote a great deal of very maudlin poetry and and angst-filled entries of all kinds. Yeah, absolutely.
Where did a lot of this writing come from? Like what was I looking at? I was looking at one of your stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's the old saying, writers are exorcists of their own demons. Does writing exorcise your demons? This is one of my paint-by-numbers questions that I ask.
That's a good one, actually. Yeah, does it exercise the demons? I don't know. I think it more exercises the demons. You know what I mean?
I mean, works them out,
Yeah, lets them get
Little
out and run
aerobic
around
workout for
a little
demons.
bit. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's a, cathartic experience, but it's also a hell of a hassle in so many ways.
What,
Writing. I don't know if you feel that way, but
Yeah, I've got a few stories I can tell you.
yeah, I mean,
I
it's work.
decided, I decided a couple of years ago to self-publish, and I did, and I put out 2 collections of short stories and 2 full-length novels.
Nice.
The reason I did it came about as a way to dare myself to finish, because mostly I enjoy short stories and I like to write short stories. Then came the more ambitious stuff, the novels. And a friend of ours, basically, a friend of the family, decided that she was going to become a writer. She had no previous experience or anything, but I don't really hold her to account for that. But she took 4 years to basically write a book. So in the time she wrote the book, I put my books out. And the reason I did it is because I was kind of angry because this person had spent an enormous amount of her life in education, basically getting a master's degree for something completely not related to writing. And then she decided to just chuck it all and not really do anything with that. And I never had the benefit of that kind of education, certainly not the time.
Right.
So I just went and wrote these books, and when I put them out, nobody cared. I mean, it wasn't successful. Even though I
Right.
busted my ass and I did it 4 times. And the thing is, it's not that I don't think it comes from a lack of talent or something. I think really, you know how you're told that if you have talent, success would eventually come?
Yeah, I think that's a It's a myth.
Nothing could be further from the truth, Eve.
Yeah, I think that's
Tenacity.
absolutely a myth.
One time, I think one of our actresses that I was working with, actually, I think it was on the very movie that you and I worked on, she told me that you're so tenacious, you'll succeed one day. And the thing is, tenacity is a very close cousin to insanity. It's doing the same thing every time and expecting, a different result. But then you get other stories, and these are the ones that really drive me mad. It's not about talent, it's about luck. And luck is a word you use when you can't figure out how you achieved your goal. It's the cold randomness of the universe. And I've had a few short stories published, but not without like a lot of heartache. Like one time I send a story to an editor, and this person writes me back and says, I stopped reading if the first sentence doesn't grab me. Right? Now that really pissed me off. And I sent him back a very angry letter. First off, I said, you probably have the easiest job in the world if all you're doing is looking at the first sentence of every story you read. And then I basically implied that he was born from incestuous parents in the back of the trailer. I was mean, and it was inappropriate. It was a very mean thing to say, but I guess I left an impression because he went back and read my story and published it. So
that's awesome.
You don't know.
That's a good story, actually.
But then there, and I get a couple of stories published in those ways. I really don't care about trying to like stroke the editor's ego, or anything like that. Not my age now.
I've had plenty of interesting feedback for stories that I've submitted. I mean, I've had some really surprisingly nice rejection letters that are like, I loved your story, but we're not publishing it, or like, this was very interesting.
I don't understand. If they love it,
right. And it's sort of like, I almost sort of think you really didn't even need to say that. Like, it's just such a tease. But then I've also had the odd one where they were like, oh, this was very twee.
Twee?
I'm thinking, really? That's your feedback for me? Twee?
That's weird, man.
I don't think that's a really subjective, comment to make. I mean, or it's not an objective comment to make. It's a very subjective comment to make, is what I meant to say. And it seems.
I've had something similar to that. I sent out queries to agents, not publishers, but agents. These are people whose jobs are to figure out how to make money from writers, right?
Right.
I had half a book written, and I did it deliberately to kind of cash in because Bronwyn told me she told me that I should try to write something that was hot, something that was topical or whatever. And this was around the time that 50 Shades of Grey came out.
Yeah.
I tried my hand at a satire about a bored housewife in the sticks who livens up her life by becoming a call girl. It was supposed to be funny, but also erotic, something in the style of Terry Southern when he did Candy.
Sure.
I get back a letter from an agent who tells me, Mr. Lawler, you're a very talented writer, and I was intrigued by your first chapter, but I don't think it'll work out.
Why are you telling me? Or why don't you give me a recommendation as to what I could do with it? Who would it work out for? Like, that's the thing that gets me. And, I hate to, I try really hard, and I've learned this over the years to try to bracket any sense of bitterness that I have, because I realize that it's really not helping me or it's not constructive for me. And I also think ultimately, like, I really want to be supportive of other artists and not, and people in the business period, you know what I mean? And not be angry or shut them down.
But you can't help but be angry when you read the story of how 50 Shades of Grey got sold. I mean, it was basically, it was Twilight fanfic, and all the names were changed.
Was. I mean, but good for her. I mean, I don't know. I do think
it's nice.
Good for them.
It's just, there's...
But I definitely have moments of passing bitterness when I think, I particularly had a lot of experiences in Los Angeles where, as an actress, and as a Pilates instructor, I had access to a very high level of client, you might say. Like, I had a lot of celebrities, and I had people that were in the business, in a pretty influential way, who come across my path and who became very friendly with me, and who knew precisely what I was up to, and still did nothing.
Care to drop any names? Any names?
No, I don't feel comfortable doing that. But
it was George Clooney. Mr. George Clooney and Mr. Richard Lewis, the stand-up comedian.
I won't name any names, but their initials are Steven Spielberg. No, nothing like that. It was definitely, it was definitely sobering and a little bit sad to realize how little anyone in my life was interested in helping me be anything but their Pilates instructor. Yeah. And, to the extent that I even had friends that were married to people who had high-level jobs and were not able to to get any assistance.
Well,
And it's
you know what?
ironic because Hollywood is such a nepotism game.
It seriously is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it does any good to really get very angry about it. Also, I will say that I've thought about it a good deal, and sometimes I can see why those jobs are handed to those people born into that environment. I mean, there's absolutely no one less self-conscious than the child of a celebrity who grew up in a celebrity environment. Like, those people are so naturally comfortable being in the
They
spotlight.
know what it's like to be fawned over and
Yeah, I mean,
given
so
everything.
they don't require any training. They don't require any refinement. Once you get them in front of the camera, they know what to do. They've seen it all their lives. You know, it's like the family business.
So, Eve,
So
what I'm getting from you about this is self-conscious. So, are you saying that you might have been a little too self-conscious for this kind of occupation?
You know, when I was young, possibly. I don't think so when I was, it's not in a very, very long time. I think, for me, I love acting, and it was very comfortable for me to I actually got to a point where I started to enjoy the audition process because it was an opportunity to act. I would be like,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't even care if I get this role. It's just a chance for me to go out and like have fun and play pretend.
Well, I don't even think you auditioned for us. I mean, I think I forget what it was. We needed a part. And because of Brahman, you kind of got the job through a connection right there.
Yeah.
And basically, we just had a meeting. I just wanted to kind of size you up. I wanted to see.
Yeah, right.
Matter of fact,
Well,
I'm sitting at the very table that we were sitting at when we were
oh,
talking.
that's so great. That's so funny.
Well, it's a great table, Eve. I mean, this
It's
is
a
like
nice table.
this is
Very nice
handmade
table.
wood, and it was a great
Yeah.
bargain. And I remember also
Handcrafted.
we had a whole bunch of people in the apartment, in that very small apartment back then.
Yes.
And our cat Monster, was seizing out right under us. Do you remember that?
God, I forgot completely
That I'll always remember
about that.
Yeah, because Monster she was like a found cat. We found her in the street and everything.
Yeah, that was absolutely crazy. I totally forgot about that.
That was so weird. And you were telling me, oh yeah, I've seen cats do that. Probably has some kind of epileptic attack or something.
Yeah. I mean, but that's so funny. I completely spaced that ever even happened. That's very
Yeah, but you
interesting.
remember now.
I do. That just
Well, the
brought it
funny
right
thing
back
about
for me.
what you mentioned, the bitterness, after that comment that agent gave me, I was extremely angry, but I did not write a letter. I just ignored it. I let it go.
Yeah.
And the only thing that kind of kept me sane during those years was I remember reading Stephen King's book on writing.
Yes, I was just going to bring that up when you said that.
And
Perfect.
he said that he had like stacks and stacks of rejections.
Yes.
But ultimately, I mean, he got a deal because he managed to find an agent, and I think, and I'm not, I don't want to sound bitter about this, but I think back then it was probably easier to be a writer. It was probably easier to find an agent because very few people thought they could be writers.
I think that's true to some extent. I also think the advent of the internet and, just computer technology has made it a more accessible craft for people. So a lot more people embark down that road than would have if it were a typewriter or handwritten, or
Right.
if you had to put everything in the mail. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
So,
now you can just send batch emails, which is what I did.
Yeah.
The fact that the agents that I was seeking out for that book were specialized in that. There are some resources online where you can find agents and what they're currently interested in. So I was
Sure.
looking for stuff, I guess, I don't know, I have a feeling that if I had your name, that I would have been published because it really
You have
seems
kind of a cool name, though.
Well, you also have a woman's name, so.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know.
What
it
if I
used to be
had
the other
changed
way
my
around,
name
right?
and I made it Miss Eve Kerrigan or something like that if I wanted
You should
to.
try that. You should try submitting some of your stuff.
Yeah, and then they'd be
under
so
a female
turned off if
pseudonym.
they found out that I was a man because apparently you can't write this stuff if you're a man. I don't know.
No, but I mean that's what's wrong with that? I mean having a nom aplomb is not like such a rare thing. I think that would be cool. You should try it and see what
Well,
happens.
J.K. Rowling, we didn't quite know who she
Right,
was until
nobody
she
knew.
came out. She actually said, "I'm a woman," and I wrote this. But that's another thing. J.K. Rowling kind of frustrates me a little bit too because I know she created a cultural phenomenon with the Harry Potter stuff. Regan loves it. Bronwyn was reading those books and everything. But I
Yeah.
looked at the book and I don't. I mean, she's not the greatest writer in the world. She just managed to she just basically remade Star Wars as a It's
Oh,
a
I don't know.
story
I
of
mean, I really
magicians.
love those books, and I think partly what I love about them is that, you read the series and you watch the kids grow up, which is kind of interesting. And the older they get, the more interesting they get, and the more interesting the books get. And also, she becomes a better writer from book one to the final book. I mean, it's night and day. She's a much, much more refined writer. And it's nice to watch that process, actually. And even in the first book, it's also, it's just that thing about, we all would like it to be about having, an incredible grasp of prose, but at the end of the day, it's really not about that. It's about the idea, and capturing the heart of something. And you can
Right.
really be a sucky ass writer. And if you can do that, you got gold.
Yeah, yeah. Have you read Stephanie Meyer, that Twilight
Right.
series?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, those books are just god awful, but I couldn't put them down.
Yeah, I
Couldn't put
remember
'em
that's the
down.
thing. See, that's another thing Stephen King said. He said that he could read J.K. Rowling. She's very fun to read, but he couldn't really get through the Twilight series because apparently she's not a very good writer, and it doesn't work. And
I don't know. There's something so incredibly archetypal and deep about what she's doing in those books that it really almost doesn't matter. And yes, she's terrible. And just by the way, 50 Shades of Grey, also in my humble opinion, in spite of everything, I think they're pretty poorly written. I mean, I think
yeah,
they're really badly written. But nothing against. I almost hate to say that because again, like I don't want to ever slag off another writer. I once saw Tom Wolfe give this speech at the National Arts Club in New York, where I used to work, and he gave this speech like he was being honored at this big dinner, and here he is, the man in white, in his white suit. He comes out and he gives this speech, and he basically spent a good 10 minutes of that speech saying nasty things about John Irving.
really. Oh my goodness.
I was shocked and stunned because I adore John Irving. First of all,
But John Irving,
everything he's ever written.
he was dissing his writing.
Yeah.
And see now,
Saying
John
nothing
Irving,
good about
and
it.
to me, John Irving and Tom Wolfe are like peas in a pod. They're
Clearly, they're contemporaries
Can I
in
tell?
every way.
Before I move on, I want to tell you how. Okay, there is one writer who actually there are two, but I already mentioned Harlan Ellison. But there is another one who just absolutely drives me to tears with their work, and that is Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh,
When I read Mother Night, and I swear to God, it was the greatest book I ever read in my life. It made me go through so much just reading it. And this is Vonnegut, and because I'm reminded of Vonnegut, because I think Tom Wolfe and people like Tom Wolfe and John Irving I think they're very
Influenced by Vonnegut.
very much so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
To read
completely.
in that kind of way, I mean, forget it.
He's a beautiful writer because
He almost made me want to stop being a writer. When I read
because
Mother
he's so
Night,
good. You're like, I can't ever measure up.
I was like, Mother Night, and then there was, what was it? A book of short stories.
Welcome to Monkey House.
Yeah, that
that's
was
a
the
good
one. And I just said, oh my God, if this is a writer, I am not a writer. Forget it. And I meant that in a good way. But
I have that experience regularly, like a lot. I read things and I think, oh dear God, I mean, what am I even playing at?
yeah,
I mean, and I know writers, friends of mine who I think are good writers, and we talk, and they say that they're not inspired by anything they read anymore, and that there's no contemporary fiction that's worth reading, and all of that. But I disagree. I mean, I read things. Probably every book I read has something in it that just blows me away, kind of,
yeah.
So I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. But yeah, I mean, I have that experience
So
all the time.
But the one item I get from your work thus far that I've read, or that read the stories, your stories are told in a very confessional way.
Yeah, that's
There's a
true.
sense of humor about them, and that's what I like, is at least you're mixing in sense of humor, but there's also a lot of pain. And one story really comes to mind. I think it's Deer.
Did you read Deer?
I read Deer. Yes, I did. I have to do my research, Eve. I was after you agreed to do this, I had to go and just plunge into everything that you were doing.
That was on my blog, I guess. That's funny. I love that you read that. That's great.
In Dear Gladys, I guess it was. And
Yeah.
It reads as a letter from a man to a woman about how he's had enough of this woman, his laundry list of complaints with regard to living with her, and it's actually very funny.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of tragic, but there's a lot of anger. And you can't deny that all writing is autobiographical. I don't care what you're writing about. George Lucas borrowed elements of his own life to make Star Wars. Now, how much of this story is autobiographical? There's way too much acid between the lines not to feel that this is a very personal journey.
Well, it is, but here's the thing about that story. Is that at the end of the day, the person writing the story, writing the letter, is actually a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, I think it is autobiographical in the sense that during that time when I was writing it, I felt like like a dog, like man's best friend or something. You know what I mean? Like, I think I felt like I was in this situation.
You felt more like the dog than Gladys.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
So that's funny. So I was trying to be silly about it, but yeah, of course. I mean,
there's just a lot of anger in that. But I read the other two stories. You sent me two stories, Dandelion and Letter S. Now, Dandelion is interesting because I wrote a story. I didn't write a story. Well, it was a children's book I was working on, and I was writing it basically for my daughter. I think she was. I think she might have been 3 or something, and Bronwyn was doing illustrations for it. We actually do want to put that together at some point. But what it is, you took a dandelion and turned it into like a symbol of uprising and revolution.
Yeah.
And I took, my story was called Delilah and the Dandelions. And what I did was I turned a dandelion into a symbol of body snatching, because basically it's a children's story about body snatching.
Oh, I dig that. I'd love to read it.
Well, it was like it's done in a kind of a prosy way, but it's basically about a little girl who realizes her parents have totally changed and become weird pod creatures or something, and then she notices that out in her backyard that dandelions have completely taken over the backyard.
Yes, yeah, of course.
So
right.
basically, what she does is she leaves them. She gets a backpack and puts all her stuff in it, and she's like a little girl. And she just goes off.
That's awesome.
Basically leaves them there because everyone has changed at that point. So where I see a body snatching scenario, you see revolution and uprising, which is pretty awesome. I mean, it's weird that we can take a dandelion. I've always liked them anyway. I don't care if they're weeds. I don't care.
Me too.
And I always had to cut them when we had the backyard in the house upstate. I always had to go out and mow the lawn and get rid of all these dandelions. But Regan always liked them too because they would turn into those.
Yeah, the yellow and they're
spores.
fuzzy. And the dandelion greens are very, very good for you. They're a blood cleanser.
Yeah, I think you said that in your story too.
Oh, I might have, yeah.
And okay, now the letter S kind of reminds me of Harlan Ellison in a way because it's more an anecdote than anything else. It's about a man with a who works in a Scrabble factory.
Yeah.
And basically collects all those tiles and everything. And the thing is,
steals S tiles.
What I like is that you don't really answer any questions at the end. My question for you as the writer, you're not going to answer this because you wrote it, but I would say, what is he going to do when he's accumulated enough S's?
I don't know.
Also the significance of him being an extremely hairy individual.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just, that's completely anecdotal. But, maybe that's not the end of Ravenel. Maybe I'll write more things about him because I love him. Right. I kind of love him. Like I have, of all the characters that I've written, I think he's the one that I love the most. And that's as much as it's not really a plot-driven story in any way, I really, that's the one that I envision the most as like a film.
But it's, like I was actually thinking that too. It's the beginning of something. It's there isn't a middle or a conclusion. It's the beginning of an idea. There's something there.
Right.
And yeah, from a strictly visual sense, definitely, I would see it. I guess I'm just imagining a whole bunch of like little S tiles. And a hairy guy.
Yeah, a hairy guy and a little cicada and like a bunch of bugs. And
yeah, the bugs.
What does his apartment look like? I bet it's awesome.
I would say that he would probably live in like a furnished room somewhere. I don't know why.
Yeah, but he's very neat and tidy, I think. But he has lots of stuff. He has
obsessions. I think people who have obsessions probably live in tight, confining spaces.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Well, I also think he lives in a small place because I think when he lost his wife and his son, he just downsized and made it as simple as possible.
You know who I'm thinking of? I don't know why. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
That's great. I love that. I mean, it's funny. I had in my mind when I was writing it, the person that popped into my head was actually Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, oh.
Yeah, and then when I like over the course of doing many rewrites, I started to picture Richard Jenkins.
Right, Richard Jenkins from 6 Feet Under, and
Yeah.
what was that movie, The Visitor?
The Visitor.
That was
Yeah.
that was a very
Fantastic.
good movie. That concludes the first part of my interview with Eve Kerrigan. Next week we discuss writers, publishing, and motherhood. I hope you can join us. Until then, keep watching the skies.
With admiration, envy, and heartfelt wishes that I could be as good a writer as he is. Dorothy Parker, Hollywood, 1962. You can think you are real hot stuff, but like they say in the movie Hearts of the West, you're not a writer till a writer says you're a writer.